Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU audiobooks. Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Education, SOE, Master's Degree Programs, Master of Arts, Distance Education, MADE, Second Year. MDE 417 Distance Education, Economic Perspective. Block 4 International Perspective. Unit-1 Cost Effectiveness of Distance Education in Asia. 1.1 Introduction. There has been a rapid increase in the demand for higher education in Asian countries. This has been accompanied by heavy public subsidy to universities and their students. However, per student expenditure is declining in many countries, reflecting their increasing inability to maintain a high-cost university system and adversely affecting the quality of instruction offered. It is imperative that these countries adopt low-cost strategies for providing public higher education of reasonable quality. Several Asian countries have, in the last 3 decades, established open universities to provide public higher education. They include, among others, Thailand, Sri Lanka, India, Indonesia, Pakistan, and China. These institutions have an important role in national higher education systems. In Thailand, for example, the country's self-financing open universities account for more higher education enrollments than the conventional system. However, there is no systematic evaluation of the substance of the education provided by these institutions, particularly in terms of the standard of the courses and the quality of the course materials. While much has been written in advocacy of open universities, surprisingly little is known about their overall delivery mode, support services quality, patterns of staff recruitment, internal efficiency, and cost effectiveness. In particular, there is no study which effectively demonstrates that an open university system, by its flexibility, covers large numbers of students at reasonable cost. To fulfill this need, we have presented in this unit some aspects of cost pertaining to a few Asian open distance education institutions. The study describes the aims and objectives of open universities and the variations in their size, organization, financing, and programs in selected Asian countries, and I examines the characteristics of the social demand for open universities, i.e., who attends open universities, what programs are APT for the system, and why. For example, what is the representation of A. Women, B. Students from rural areas, C. Socially and economically disadvantaged groups. They employed mature students. To analyze data on unit and program cost of these institutions with a focus on sources of variation in component cost. Special attention is given to the determination of student fees and to remuneration of academic staff. 3. Examines the quality of course materials and how and who prepares them. 4. Compares data on the internal efficiency of instruction at the institutional and program levels, including costs per graduate, wastage rates, and average length of time needed to complete programs of study. We presents information on the quality of programs offered as measured by pass rates and success in externally administered examinations for professional certification, and 6. Reviews studies of the external efficiency of open university programs, i.e., employment of graduates, impact of training on careers and job performance. Many open universities have focused on in-service teacher training, though other areas ought to have been covered. The study was conducted in 1991, and therefore the data presented include that as the base year, though, other than costing results, the universities have undergone significant changes in their nature of programs, student enrollment, and distance delivery. This was a report which has been summarized as much as possible, though still it is longer than a common unit. 1.2 Learning Objectives. After going through this unit, you should be able to describe various cost types, costing approaches, and cost functions adopted in this case study, applicable to any cost study on distance education, and compare and contrast cost of distance education in some selected open universities and dual-mode universities in India. 1.3 Choice of institutions. Thailand has 3 institutions that provide distance education in one form or another. Isukothai Tamithira Open University. 2 Ramkhamhain University. 3 Center for Educational Technology. Sri Lanka has the National Institute of Education, besides the Open University of Sri Lanka. In India, besides the National University, IGNOU, there were 13 state open universities, one each in the states of Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra, Rajasthan, Bihar, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Assam, West Bengal, Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand, and Odisha. In addition to these, there are more than 150 conventional universities and higher level institutions which are offering correspondence education through their directorates institutes of correspondence distance education. These dual-mode institutions have long been in existence and account for a substantial portion of the enrollment of distance learners in the country. In Indonesia, there were 6 institutions offering university and sub-university level education using a distance teaching mode. IB University Terbuka, Jakarta. 2 National Teachers Distance Education, UN Bandung. 3 Center for Educational Communication Technology, Ministry of Education, Jakarta. 4 Center for Educational Training for Program Personnel, National Family Coordinating Board, Jakarta. We Indonesia Banking Development Institute, Bureau of Distance Learning Program, Jakarta. 6 Parental Training Center, Division of Distance Learning System, Bandung. In Pakistan, only Allama Iqbal Open University is known to offer open education at the higher education level. Besides, there is Virtual University of Pakistan offering virtual distance education for past decades. There were 6 institutions currently offering open higher education in Hong Kong. The first of these is a single-node institution and the rest are conventional institutions offering regular face-to-face education and distance education through Department of Continuing Education and Open Learning Institute, Hong Kong. 2 The School of Professional and Continuing Education, University of Hong Kong. 3 Extramural Studies DEPT. The Chinese University of Hong Kong. 4 The Continuing Education DEPT. Hong Kong Polytechnic. We Center for Continuing Education, City Polytechnic of Hong Kong. 6 School of Continuing Education, Baptist College, Hong Kong. In the case of India, samples have been taken from all the 3 categories of institutions. National Open University, 2 State Open University, and 3 Institutes of Correspondence Course Directorates of Distance Education. Thus, the list of institutions included in the unit is Thailand, Sukhothai Thamitiral Open University. Sri Lanka, Open University of Sri Lanka. Indonesia, Universitas Terbuka. Pakistan, Allama Iqbal Open University. India, Indira Gandhi National Open University. To 8. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University. B. Yashwantharao Chauhan Maharashtra Open University. C. Kota Open University. 3. Select Institutes of Correspondence Distance Education. Courses 1. For Distance Education in Asia. Costing Approach. The 6 sections, 1st April 2001 to 1st April 2006, focus on the factors which determine the costing approach in the relevant institutions. The mission statement of individual institutions are computed with their respective student numbers, student profiles and the type of programs on offer, and an explanation is given for the prevailing trends. In the light of the nature of social demands for education, costing models, cost types, costing terms and costing approaches appropriate for the institutions concerned are chosen and defined. The discussion has linkages with the cost analysis and cost benefits, which are the themes of Units 3 and 4 of this block. 1st April 2001 Costing Approach. The later half of the 20th century has been witness to a revolution, the consequences of which can only be dimly visualized even today. Science and technology have set a new pace and pattern for life and work. Knowledge is generated at a faster rate than ever before in human history. The spectrum of applications of the new knowledge is ever widening, and the communication technology has brought people worldwide closer together than ever before. We have been witness to some of the consequences of these developments: the disintegration of empires and power blocks, the rise and fall of economic and political doctrines and dogmas, and the very optimistic expectations about the emergence of new world order yet undefined in many cases. The post-war reconstruction of economics in America, Europe and Japan placed a higher emphasis on education in science and technology to promote research and development. The expansion of technical and professional education in these countries as against the traditional liberal arts education was phenomenal. The emergence of a new class of entrepreneurs and managers who were instrumental in accelerating the pace of economic development in these countries was a direct consequence of this change in the focus of higher education. The emergence of a very large number of independent nation-states, most of them acquiring freedom from their colonial masters, was another major development during this period. Each one of them was keen to establish a national identity, the major components of which included economic and political independence. Both required human resources. Their attention inevitably turned to developing their own human resource through the setting up of institutions of education and training. Several countries have achieved rapid development in the post-war period. For the most part, they have two features in common. They invested in the education of men and women, and in physical capital. World Development Report 1991-31. The classical view, education for enlightenment, surely gave way to the new approach, education for development, that made education an economic activity, an investment in people. By improving people's ability to acquire and use information, education deepens their understanding of themselves and the world. enriches their minds by broadening their experiences, and improves the choice they make as consumers, producers, and citizens. Education strengthens their ability to meet their wants and those of their family by increasing their productivity and their potential to achieve a higher standard of living. World Development Report 1991, 55 to 56. The new approach, education for development, has a sociological dimension. 2. Many of the newly independent countries, and some even in the developed world, had to encounter problems of equity and of access of education. While in countries like the USA, affirmative action by the state in favor of the less privileged tried to address these problems, in the developing countries, government had to allocate substantial resources for the creation of educational facilities to provide the necessary opportunities to ensure equity and access. The significant growth and development of distance education has been a response to all these challenges. 1st April 2002 Cost Function Models. The economic interests, besides leading to significant developments in the concepts and delivery modes of higher education, led to a search for methods of assessing the cost-benefit, input-output relationship in education. This, in turn, paved way for developing several models to study and analyze the costs. Cost analysis essentially involves four major steps. 1. Identification of inputs which generate costs. From the purely economic point of view, there are no free resources. Where such resources seem to be available freely, someone bears the cost, and a national value has to be assigned to those resources. 2. Distinguishing the operating costs, recurring annual costs, from the capital costs, one-time investments that can be drawn upon over a number of years, and therefore can be assigned a derived annual value. 3. Separating the variable cost, which fluctuate more or less proportionately with the number of students. 4. Analyzing the cost function to establish the relationship between the cost and the number of students, in terms of total costs, average costs, and marginal costs. Funding policy of governments in the domain of distance education varies from country to country. There is hardly any standard or universally accepted method of arriving at the per capita cost in distance education. Certain approaches have been developed by the academics for cost analysis. They are briefly discussed here to provide an introduction to cost analysis discussed in Unit-4 for various universities. A sample equation which could be applied in any education system is TC is equal to F plus VN, where TC is equal to total cost, F is equal to total fixed cost, V is equal to variable cost per unit, N is equal to number of units of output, e.g. students hours, etc. The total cost function here is observed to be linear, and the average cost, AC, is obtained simply by dividing the fixed cost, F, by the output, N, and adding it to the variable cost, V. Thus, AC is equal to Fn plus V. To describe the fundamental cost-inducing variable in distance education, a modified form of the above equation was developed in the mid-1970s by the UK Open University. This was based on two fundamental variables, namely the number of students and the number of courses under the development and on offer. C is equal to A plus BX plus CY, where C is equal to total cost. A is equal to the fixed cost. X is equal to the number of courses, those under development weighted as 1.0, plus those on offer weighted as 0.1 asterisk. Y is equal to the number of students. B is equal to the average cost per course. C is equal to the average cost per student. For several years this equation was used as the basis for determining funds to be provided to the UK Open University. This approach was later taken up and modified by a number of other open universities. At Athabasca University, Snowden and Daniel, 1983-76-82, developed a more sophisticated costing model. TC is equal to a 1x1 plus a 2x2 plus by plus C, where TC is equal to total cost. X1 is equal to course credits in development. X2 is equal to course credits in delivery. Y is equal to weighted course enrollments. And A1 is equal to course development costs per credit. A2 is equal to course revision maintenance replacement costs per credit. B is equal to delivery cost per weighted course enrollment. C is equal to institutional costs, overhead. Another dimension in the development of models has been to identify the subcomponents within the fixed cost and variable cost pertaining to the subsystems of distance education system, namely production system, P, instructional system, I, evaluation system, P, administrative system, A. Applying these subsystems to the fixed cost, F, and the variable cost, V, the simple equation TC is equal to TF plus TV. Total cost is equal to total fixed cost plus total variable cost is expanded as TC is equal to TFP plus TFE plus TF plus TFA plus TVP plus T6 plus TVE plus T1, where TFP is equal to total fixed cost for production. TFE is equal to total fixed cost for instruction. TFE is equal to total fixed cost for evaluation. TFA is equal to total fixed cost for administration. Asterisk different weights have been assigned, keeping in mind the cost for developing a course afresh and the cost for maintaining a course already on offer. A number of other models have been developed. These models appear to be simple, but fail to specify the cost-affecting variables in sufficient details to be of any practical help in cost justification or estimates. Nevertheless, these models are useful inasmuch as they give an insight into the cost structure. Activity 1.1. Describe the basic cost function in distance education. 1st April 2003 cost types. There are broadly 5 cost types. Birch and Cuthbert, 1981. A historical cost. 2 replacement cost. 3 standard cost. 4 project cost. V opportunity cost. Historical cost is an attempt to summarize in monetary terms the extent to which an activity has consumed or appropriated resources. Replacement cost refers to the cost that would be incurred to acquire equivalent physical facilities or to buy comparable materials or services to replace those obtained in the past. Standard costs are predetermined costs to serve as a norm or basis for comparison with actual costs. Projected costs are estimates of future costs. Opportunity costs relate to foregone resources or revenue as a result of choosing one alternative in lieu of another. Only the first these 5 types of cost represent the actual cost money's worth. sacrificed in performing an activity or acquiring an asset or receiving the goods and services. The rest depend, to a considerable extent, on hypotheses and assumptions. For purpose of a study of cost effectiveness, which ipso facto involves comparison of cost, we have to take recourse largely of the historical costs, the data for which can be had from the financial records of the institutions concerned. Other costs replacement, standard and projected might help in consolidating the findings of comparison of the historical costs. Opportunity costs are too complex to determine and too hypothetical in nature to be of any substantial help in assessing cost effectiveness. 1st April 2004 Costing terms. The component of cost, whatever be the method of costing, can be classified as direct and indirect for some purpose, and as fixed and variable on certain other considerations. Direct costs are those which are readily identifiable with a cost center. If the concern is to determine the cost of running an academic department within an institution, then the academic and administrative staff working exclusively for the department has to be identified. There may be other staff responsible for maintaining the institutional administration, the accounts, the campus, the library and such other common facilities. The department concerned, though has some staff working exclusively for it, may still not be able to function if the other staff looking after the general administration and common facilities is not there. In this instance, the academic department is the cost center. The salaries paid for the staff exclusively working for the department are the direct cost, and a rational proportion of the salaries paid to the other staff is the indirect cost of the department. The indirect costs are also referred to as overheads, and they are the costs which are not readily identifiable with a cost center. A rational process of determining the proportion of the indirect cost pertaining to a cost center is known as apportionment. It is necessary to apportion indirect costs to a given cost center. But there is no one correct method of doing it. All that could be said is that the apportionment should be governed by rational, equitable and practicable considerations. Different considerations norms may be necessary for apportioning different costs. A variable cost is that segment to the total cost which varies with the volume of output, the segment that remains constant irrespective of the volume of output is known as the fixed cost. The cost preparing a unit of course material, writing, editing, revising, composing, remains fixed whatever the number of students enrolled for it, but the production cost, printing, binding and distributing, varies with every change in the number of students enrolled. The former constitutes the fixed segment while the latter constitutes the variable segment of the total cost of course development. 1.4. 5. Approaches to costing. Cost analysis may be done along several directions, but there are three basic approaches which are more commonly used in the context of costing. Education, IFO, or absorption costing. 2. Differential, or incremental costing, and 3. Standard costing. Full costing requires that all direct costs are allocated and indirect costs are apportioned to the cost center. They may be subsequently related to cost units of output or activity, such as per capita cost, cost per credit, cost per program, etc. Differential costing attempts to identify the change in costs resulting from an option of a different level of activity or mode of operation. Suppose an institution desires to change over from telecasting its video lessons to distributing video cassettes to students. Differential costing approach will provide details of the change in costing that would follow. Standard costing attempts to compare actual costs with predetermined norm cost. A significant variation, if noticed, may necessitate further investigation. The variation might be due to circumstances outside the control of management or within. If within, remedial measures may have to be devised. Standard costing may be useful to check and keep the expense of a school division in an institution within targeted limits. Differential costing approach may be helpful whenever a change in the level of activity or mode of operations is contemplated. It may be relevant whenever questions of increase-decrease in enrollment, reduction enlargement of option range, launching withdrawal of courses, etc. are planned or anticipated. The full costing approach is relevant to the purpose of reviewing evaluating the cost, performance or cost-effectiveness relationship. 1st April 2006 The costing model for IGNOU. When a study of the cost analysis for IGNOU was taken up, it was realized that none of the theoretical models developed and available in the published documents are directly applicable. Taking into account the literature in the field, a method of approach was evolved by Pillai and Naidu, 1991, to analyze the cost for 1989 to 90. They set out on two purposes: defining and analyzing the existing cost structure of IGNOU, and 2. Norm-setting for the future. The pursuit of the former results in the identification of the major cost factors and disaggregation of the total cost of IGNOU in terms of cost components, leading to the derivation of unit costs per measure of output. In pursuit of the latter, the authors have tried to develop, on the basis of the unit costs derived, productivity norms for course development, in terms of time dimension, and cost norms for different activities associated with production, delivery, etc. In the study made by Pillai and Naidu, the unit costs are determined and standardized at the outset. The course is identified as a unit. A student is identified as another unit. The unit of a course consists of 8 credits, 240 hours of study, and a unit student is a 32 credit, 960 hours of study, or equivalent curriculum load student. The authors then identify the major cost heads. The cost heads are: 1. Printed materials cost. The development phase. The non-faculty cost. 2. The faculty cost. B. The production phase. Printing costs. 2. Distribution costs. 2. Audio-video materials cost. The development cost. B. The diffusion cost. 3. Student record maintenance and examination processing cost. 4. Admission cost. 5. Student counseling cost. 6. Library and documentation cost. 7. General administration cost. 8. Common services and general changes. 9. Capital costs. Along with the identification of major cost heads, significant cost elements under each head are listed out. While listing out the cost elements, wherever the actual value of a cost element is not directly available, the authors have explained how the value may be worked out or deduced from the available cost data. Using the cost details collected for the cost elements and the cost head for the sample courses, average cost of an 8-credit course is computed for the development phase and the printing phase separately. Similarly, the average cost for producing audio-video material for an 8-credit course is worked out. Adding these average costs, the total, average, fixed cost for an 8-credit course is worked out. The total cost is then annualized applying the annualization factor A, then, using the formula A into Rn is equal to R into L plus R whole powers n upon 1 plus R whole powers n minus 1, where Rn is equal to annualization factor, R is equal to interest rate, N is equal to lifetime of the material. To work out per student unit cost, the annual enrollment of students in different programs of varying credit values has been standardized by weighting the students on the basis of the credit values they had enrolled for. To determine the annual unit cost per student, the total revenue expenditure for the given year is broken up under a number of cost elements and regrouped under major cost heads, relating to 3 categories: fixed, semi-variable and variable. The annual unit costs are worked out for each of the cost elements and cost heads by dividing the recurrent costs per student for semi-variable, variable and indirect costs are obtained and the total annual recurrent cost per student is arrived at. Applying a uniform credit rating for all programs and applying the unit costs derived, cost of launching an 8-credit course, fixed costs for materials, preparation and program delivery costs have been determined. The cost function in launching a new program is defined as CNP is equal to BX plus CXY, where CNP is equal to cost of developing and delivery of a new program. X is equal to number of 8-credit equivalent course in a program. Y is equal to number of weighted 8-credit equivalent student in a program. B is equal to cost of developing a new 8-credit course. C is equal to cost of delivery of services to an 8-credit equivalent student. In the whole costing exercise described above, the capital cost has not been taken into account. Depreciation of infrastructure facilities has also not been considered. Based on the approach outlined above, the per capita cost for selected programs in IGNOU has been worked out in Unit 3. Per capita cost at other institutions given in Unit 3 has not followed necessarily the same approach because of different cost orientation and or non-availability of data along the suggested lines. The cost study of different institutions is discussed in Unit 3. The study takes into account the sample method of costing, evolved in cost analysis of distance education, IGNOU, Pillai and Naidoo 1991, as described above. Cost analysis and norm setting, if worked out realistically for different open learning institutions, could provide a sound basis for interinstitutional comparison of cost performance. Moreover, a uniform approach in costing is desired for any comparative study worth the effort. Activity 1.2. What cost function is applicable while doing a cost analysis for developing a new program? 1.5 Case studies of some Asian institutes of distance education. In this unit, an attempt has been made to present the details of cost study of the identified institutions of distance teaching in India, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, Hong Kong, Thailand and Pakistan. IGNOU b.ed, IGNOU, KU and the CCIs in India, IUSL in Sri Lanka, UT in Indonesia, OLI in Hong Kong, STU in Thailand and IU in Pakistan are discussed, focusing on the various cost components in general and with a particular emphasis on the comparative per capita costs of these institutions in relation to the conventional universities in these respective countries. A reference was made in the previous unit that cost analysis involves separation of the operating cost, recurrent annual costs, from the capital cost. Investments in assets like building, equipment, etc., which can be used for a number of years. In this study, we have separated the operating cost, but have not taken into account the capital costs and its annualized value. This was for the simple reason that many of the open universities studied in this block are still to make substantial investment in the creation of their assets. Similarly, while computing unit costs, only institution costs have been taken into account. Private costs, including opportunity costs, have been kept out of the purview of the study, except where the information could be collected through some secondary source such as earlier studies. The decision to keep the private costs out was taken considering the complexity involved in computing the private costs and the opportunity costs. In this unit, most of the tables and figures have been taken from the papers presented at the Madras seminar. So the information on sources is given only in cases where the source happens to be other than the papers presented at the Madras seminar. 1st May 2001 Indira Gandhi National Open University. IGNOU. Study. Institutional average per capita cost. In subsection 1st April 2006, we discussed the costing model adopted for IGNOU. Here, we analyze specifically the different components of average annual per capita cost of IGNOU in more detail. IGNOU has worked out the annual institutional average per capita cost, the annual cost per capita and the annual cost per student for each of its programs. The annual institutional average per capita cost has been worked out by dividing the total revenue cost by the number of weighted students registered in the year concerned. The total cost has been identified under three major headings. I. Cost of course development and production. 2. Cost of student support services, and 3. Cost of institutional overheads. Each of the above cost components has been further divided into subheads to give a more detailed analysis of costs. The cost items this identified under each cost component, cost structure and the annual average per capita cost are significant indicators to judge the cost effectiveness of IGNOU. Under the cost components, we can identify three major areas such as a. Course development and production, 2. Student support services and 3. Institutional overheads. Course development in production includes the preparation and production of self-instructional materials in print, audio and video. Under student support, we include admission, maintenance of students' record, material distribution, counseling, tutoring and examination. Institutional overheads would mean library and documentation, general administration, estate management, general services, and miscellaneous items. Of the total cost in the year 1991 to 1992, course development and production accounted for about 43%. Student support services 25% and the institutional overheads 32%. With marginal variations, the same trend prevailed in the previous two academic years as well as when IGNOU was actively engaged in course development and the expansion of other activities. The annual per capita costs for each of the components for the year 1991 to 92 were: course development is equal to Rs. 879 millions, student support Rs. 519 millions, institutional overheads Rs. 648 millions. Table 1.1 shows the annual per capita cost of the IGNOU from 1989 to 1992. Program-wise annual per capita cost. Program-wise annual cost per student has been derived from the above. Annual average cost per student. The process of this program-wise deduction of cost has been complex because the programs offered by IGNOU are at various levels. 2. There are significant cost factors responsible for variation in cost between one program and the other. 3. The cost factors as far as production of materials is concerned are determined by the number of constituent courses in the program, the level of offering, and the efforts involved in development and production. And 4. The cost factor concerning delivery are governed by such components as laboratory practical, student project, etc. Precise data is not available to assess the cost of each program separately. Yet an effort has been made to derive the program costs on the basis of certain well-defined parameters like the number of courses in a program, the volume of materials produced, the number of study centers activated for the program, etc., and applying them to the average costs. 1st May 2002 Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University, Broad. Study. Expenditure and receipts. Among the IUs in India, BRA has been in operation for the longest period. The yearly budgets for the university for the past 10 years provide the details of expenditure and receipts under different heads. Applying the total expense. Every year, average expenditure receipt per student and average government grant per student are worked out year-wise for the 10 years. Fee income versus expenditure. The total indicates that a major portion of expenditure is met by student fee. Yearly averages over the 10 years confirm this indication. Yearly average expenditure, 00000 hours, is equal to 291.70. Yearly average fee receipt, 00000 hours, is equal to 226.60. Yearly average grants, 00000 hours, is equal to 94.10. Yearly average student strength is equal to 37,400. Yearly average expenditure per student, in hours, is equal to 780. Yearly average fee income per student, in hours, is equal to 606. Yearly average grants per student, in hours, is equal to 251. The total yearly average income per student exceeds total yearly average expenditure by 77 rupees, because in the calculation here only recurrent costs are taken into consideration, leaving out fixed costs. The excess per capita income from the government source is for meeting the fixed cost requirement. Detailed cost analysis. A detailed cost analysis for the 3 preceding years, 1989 to 90, 1990 to 91, 1991 to 1992, is carried out under 3 major heads of cost components: course development, student support services and institutional overheads. These represent the fixed costs, variable costs and indirect costs respectively. Each head has been further subdivided into a number of cost items. From the detail thus worked out, average per student cost under each of the three major heads has been calculated year-wise by adding up the average cost per student. Under the three heads in a year, average unit cost per student per year has been calculated. Project cost of a b.ed program. Having made an expert cost analysis of the preceding years, an attempt has also been made to compute the cost of an academic program, given the operational factors governing an academic program of b.ed. See Table 1.4, given below are the postulates, assumptions, and details of projected estimates. An academic program of 1 year duration leading to an award of degree or diploma consists of 6 to 8 courses. Each course is divided into blocks and each block is subdivided into units. The program costs are arrived at by assuming the following. At the duration of the program in 1 year. B. The academic program consists of 8 courses. C. The expected student enrollment is 5,000 in 1 year. D. The course material is printed for 1 year. E. The print material consists of 25 units, comes to 500 pages in double demi size. F. The number of counseling sessions will be 20 for one course. J. The program is offered at 50 study centers. H. One internal faculty member will coordinate the course writing and it would take 1 year for the completion of course writing and printing. I. It would take 10,000 rupees for production of one video lesson and Rs 1,000 for an audio-radio lesson. J. The audio-visual supplement consists of 2 audio lessons, 2 radio lessons, and 2 video lessons for the course, and K. Travel expenses are restricted to first-class train fares only. 1st May 2003 Yashwantrao Chavan Maharashtra Open University, IGNOU, Study Cost Components and Cost Centers. IGNOU was still at its formative stage. It was rather difficult, therefore, to find out realistic program cost and unit cost. However, an attempt has been made to analyze the expenditure of the first 3 years to get idea of the costs involved. The cost components of revenue expenditure as envisaged by the university are classified into operational costs and developmental costs. The operational costs include I. Cost of producing study texts, 2. Multi-copying of audio-video tapes, floppies, experimental kits, etc. 3. Cost of delivery including costs of such activities as publicity, registration, study center organization, counseling, formative and summative, evaluation and certification. 4. Cost of maintenance activities, and B. Cost of infrastructural support. The developmental costs include I. Cost of planning for the programs, and 2. Cost of development of program design, infrastructural materials, feedback and reforms. IGNOU has 8 divisions. The likely distribution ratio between developmental and operational costs for each of these divisions is expected to be as follows. Table 1.5, IGNOU, expected distribution of developmental and operational costs. Look at the screen. Annual per capita cost. The revenue expenditure for the first 3 consecutive years is given in table 1.6. The expenditure has been divided into 4 main stages of operation, i.e. development, production, delivery and infrastructure. Table 1.6, IGNOU, revenue expenditure by division and stages of operations. Hours. In lakhs. Look at the screen. The year-wise total revenue expenditure is calculated and divided by the total number of students to give cost per student. The effective student number is arrived at by applying 0.5 weight to students enrolled on short-term courses. So the student number is the number of students on year-long courses added to half the number of students on short-term courses. The cost per student is around Rs. 2,200, which is obviously high since the enrollment is quite low. Projected cost per student course. Initially, expenditure on various programs and courses was not segregated. Further, the divisions were regrouped after the initial 1.5 years. So, the divisional expenditure cannot be disaggregated program course-wise. This may be possible shortly when the computerization of expenditure materializes. Calculation of unit cost per program course may not be possible till then. Hence, an attempt has been made to estimate the likely cost of a course on the basis of costs incurred and the rates of honoraria, etc., paid by the university. The expenditure per student for an 8 credit point course in the b.ed program works out to be about Rs 237-. Infrastructure cost for administrative support is taken at 40%. On the basis of this estimate, the unit cost per student per year, 32 credit points, will be about Rs 950, and the entire program cost of 12 courses to be completed in a minimum 3 years will be Rs 2850-. First May 2004 CCI study. The CCIs function under dual-mode universities, offering simultaneously both classroom teaching and correspondence course. Hence, all through the cost calculation, a tendency to compare the two modes within each university is maintained. The income details of 3 such institutions have been collected in Table 1.7. Per student cost is worked out in Table 1.8 for weighted enrollments. The weighted costs have been worked out by dividing the total expenditure by the weighted enrollment. The following weights have been assigned to different levels of programs to reflect higher costs at successive higher levels. Certificate 0.25, Diploma 0.5, Undergraduate 1, Postgraduate 1.7, MPhil 2.8, PhD 2.8. The above weights have been assigned on subjective assessment of value attributed to knowledge at successive higher levels and the corresponding efforts to be put forth by the teaching institutions to cope with the needs. 1st May 2005 Open University of Sri Lanka, OUSL, study. OUSL offers courses of different credit rating, and the credit rating of course has direct relation to the amount of study materials. Hence, student credit number of students enrolled on a course multiplied by the credit value of the course is taken as the basic cost center. For the year 1990, the total student credits in the 3 faculties were: Faculty of Engineering Technology is equal to 3,994.50, Faculty of Natural Sciences is equal to 2,027.75, Faculty of Humanities and Social Science is equal to 11,880. 06. To work out the cost per student for a given program, the total faculty Specific costs and the total non-faculty costs are identified for each faculty. ing. Technology is equal to Rs 4.125 millions. Faculty of Natural Science is equal to Rs 3.606 millions. Faculty of Humanities and Social Science is equal to Rs 1.975 millions in Sri Lankan rupees. The overhead expenditure and the expenditure on student support services were distributed among the three faculties according to the number of student credits or courses. The production cost for books was distributed on the number of books produced for each faculty. Putting all these direct and indirect costs together, the total expenditure for the three faculties in 1990 were: Faculty of Engineering Technology is equal to Rs 11.925 millions, Faculty of Natural Science is equal to Rs 10.720 millions, Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences is equal to Rs 15.698 millions. As each faculty was offering varying number of programs, the total faculty cost was distributed among the academic programs of the faculty according to the ratio of student credits in each program. From the cost this computed, cost per student per year for each program is determined. Table 1.9, USL, cost per student per year program wise, 1990. In Sri Lankan Rs. Certificate in Preschool Education 1223.16. Diploma in Management 3271.73. Diploma in Technology 7681.07. Bachelor in Law, LLB, 2914.49. Bachelor in Science, BSc, 10,985.70. Details of institutional overhead costs, total cost of student support services, and the total cost of production of course materials are not available. Similarly, details of computations of cost per program and the number of students or student credits per program are also not available. An earlier study conducted in 1989, Cost of Course Programs of Study, offered by IGNOU.1989, by Disanake and others present data under the following heads. I. Variable cost of course per credit. 2. Overheads. 3. Total cost of course with present fees. 4. Comparison of costs with present fees. B. Recoverable overheads with present fees. 6. Salaries of staff, and 7. Cost of programs of study. However, details of average cost for producing 1 unit of printed course material, 1 unit of audio material and 1 unit of video material are given, each individually. The cost of a printed book, 100 pages in A4 size, was Rs. Sri Lanka, 65 in the year 1991. The cost of one video program of 30 minutes duration was 52,350 rupees, and the cost of one radio program of 30 minutes duration was Rs 3425. 1st May 2006 University Tebuka, UT, Study Cost Data. Government grants provide 57.9% of UT revenue, and 42.1% comes from student fees and the sale of material. For computing unit costs, the following data are used. I. Total costs for course development, course delivery and overhead management. 2. The number of credits offered, and 3. The level of enrollment for each course for 5 consecutive years. The total cost for the UT courses and programs during the study period. 1985-86-1989-90 was 38.81 billion in Indonesian rupiah, 20 US dollars 98 cents million. The breakup is as follows: course development 8480,978, 21%. Course delivery 16,341,553, 42%. Overhead management 3987,387, 36%. Musa 1991. Unit costs. The cost per course was calculated on the basis of estimated total cost per credit for each type of UT course. The cost per student for each UT course is obtained by the number of students taking the course. Similarly, the cost per credit is calculated by dividing the cost per student of each course by the credit load of the course. The total cost of the UT course and the costs per student and per credit are given below. Table 1.10 UT estimated total cost for the UT courses and unit costs per student and per credit in rupiah. Look at the screen. Per student and per credit costs vary considerably within and between the groups of courses. The variations in the cost per credit, though the allocation of money has been constant for each credit, are due to the difference in the enrollments, cost and fee ratio. Table 1.10 above shows that the most expensive courses were those offered by the School of Mathematics and Physics. The least expensive were those by the School of Social and Political Science. The existing tuition fee, which averages to 5,000 Rp, is generally equal to the unit cost for the course of the latter. It is about 50% of the cost per credit for economics, 9% for maths and physics, and 10% for education courses. 1st May 2007 Open Learning Institute, OLI, study. The OLI, Hong Kong, now, the Open University of Hong Kong, was expected to be totally self-financing within a period of 4 years, with the target set. Thus, the government grant has been decreasing over the years, with a corresponding increase in the tuition fees. The expenditure is accounted under the major heads: direct cost, staff costs, and other costs. Per credit costs under these heads have been added up to get the total cost per credit. 20 credits of OLI are equivalent to 1 credit of UKU. 40 credits are taken to be equivalent to the curriculum load of 1 year at the conventional institutions. Cost efficiency effectiveness rates, reproduced below, have been worked out by Dhanarajan and Hope, 1992, 18. 1st May 2008 Sukhothai Thammathirat Open University. STU, study. The total expenses of Thailand's STU in 1992 amounted to 645,544,100 bahts. A breakup of this total expense against different expense types is as follows: salaries and wages 150,232,400, equipment, land and construction 7210,400, central fund 17875,500, Chayarangam 1987. The expense types listed are primary types and the figures are approximate. The first type includes salaries and wages of employees, a majority of whom receive the full salary and benefit packages as fixed for government employees. The second category includes payment for a wide variety of services, such as course writing, assessing exam scripts, seminar teaching, overtime, wages fees, transportation and accommodation expenses, etc., and payment for consumable materials and utilities such as electricity, water, telephone, mailing. The third category includes audiovisual equipment, printing equipment, office equipment, etc. The fourth category represents the monetary sum over and above income allocated to the other three divisions. Government funding. STOU's primary source of income is the Thai government. It received 136 million bahts in 1992. Though this amount looks substantial compared to budget allocation made to other universities institutes in Thailand, it is the second lowest. This has to be viewed in the light of the fact that STOU's student enrollment represents nearly the highest enrollment of any higher education institution in Thailand. The annual government allocation is again meager when viewed against the annual expenses. The government allocation for 1992 was just 21.12% of the STOU total expenses for the year, 646 million bahts. In the year 1989, only 14.51% of STOU's annual expenditure was contributed by government. Chiangam, 1987. The government budgetary allocation to STOU is earmarked for certain items on STOU's list of expenses. Out of the total allocation of 136 million bahts for 1992, a major part 103 million bahts, 75%, was meant for the expenses under the head salaries and wages. The remaining was distributed to select items under other heads. STOU had to self-support to the tune of 47.5 million bahts. For salaries and wages, about 31.62% of the total expenses under this head. The government contribution to expenses for airtime was 0.02% and to audiovisual supplies was 0.09%. Its contribution to expenses for printing, supplies, course writers and tutors was nil. Thus, the funding from the government is very limited. Revenue from students. The other major source of funds for STOU is the revenue from students. For a 2-year degree program, a student has to pay about 5,600 bahts, which is admittedly low by any standard. The size of annual revenue received from students in the year 1989 was 279.5 million bahts and in 1992 it was 319.4 million bahts. Chiangam, 1987. Apart from revenue from students, STOU has other resources such as supplementary revenue, land donations and financial grants to supplement the limited government contribution. No current information could be obtained for cost study despite our efforts. We present below some relevant information pertaining to 1982, published in 1987. Operating cost per head by institution. The National Education Commission of Thailand conducted a study on operating and capital costs of government universities and private colleges in 1982. A comparison of operating costs per head of government universities in 1982 with that of STOU in 1982 is provided in Table 1.13. The operating cost per head at STOU is 2,341 baht. Table 1.13, STOU, operating cost per head as percentage of cost per head of other universities, 1982. Look at the screen. Operating cost per graduate. The National Education Commission, 1982, has also compared the operating cost per graduate at STOU with the corresponding cost at other institutions. It has been assumed that the success rate at STIU is 50% of the cohort. The comparison is made in Table 1.14. STIU per graduate cost is fixed as 7,023 baht. Table 1.14, STIU, operating cost per graduate as percentage of cost per graduate. In other universities, 1982, in bahts. Look at the screen. 1st May 2009 Allama Iqbal Open University, IIU, study. No current cost study report could be obtained on IIU and we had to depend on whatever information was available through secondary sources. Siddiqui, 1987, refers to UK Overseas Development Administration ODA, sponsored studies undertaken in January-February 1979 and March 1983. d.pharm was conducted by an evaluation mission in connection with the phasing of further assistance to the IIU. Considering the amortization of capital costs, salaries and other recurrent expenditure together with student numbers, the mission felt that the IIU would progressively show considerable cost advantages over other conventional institutions, IBID 218. The ODA team, according to the country paper summaries presented in Distance Education is South Asia, 1989, demonstrated that the cost of a graduate at a conventional university was 18,850 rupees compared to the cost of graduate at IIU, which was in the range of 8,670 rupees to 12,000 rupees. But about 35% of IIU cost mentioned above is met by the student fees. If this factor is taken into consideration, the net cost of a graduate at IIU is in the range of 5,680 rupees to 8,500 rupees, which is between 30% and 45% of the cost in the conventional system, IBID 144. The second study referred to by Siddiqui is a review of the university taken up jointly by the government of Pakistan and the ODA. This concluded that the IIU could provide graduate-level education more cheaply than conventional universities in Pakistan, provided that enrollments were sufficiently high. Siddiqui observes that both the assessments were proved by subsequent analysis, which have indicated that with an enrollment of 5,000, average student costs are approximately 30% of the cost of educating a graduate. At a conventional university, Siddiqui, 1987-220. 1. 6. Cost advantage. Any assessment of cost becomes meaningful only by comparative assessment of advantage in relation to the cost incurred by an alternative means to achieve the same objective. So a comparison of the like with like is necessary to make any cost study worth its effort. One measure of cost effectiveness that is meaningful in the present study is a comparison of the cost for a given program in the open universities with the corresponding program in the conventional system. Identical programs in both the systems with scope for one-to-one comparison are not many. The conventional universities again have not maintained records in such a manner as to facilitate disaggregation of cost per individual for each program. There are many common items of expenditure in the conventional system which cannot be easily apportioned to individual programs and much less to individual courses. Notwithstanding the above limitations, an attempt has been made, Pillai, 1992, to compare the cost of the bachelor's degree program offered by IGNOU with similar programs offered by colleges affiliated to different universities in India. There were about 7,400 such colleges in the country. Data from about 80 colleges distributed in different parts of the country, spread over 6 states, have been collected and analyzed. The per student unit cost for the year 1989 to 90, when the data were available, has been worked out. The annual average revenue expenditure of 79 colleges belongs to 6 states. Jammu and Kashmir 16, Madhya Pradesh 12, Orissa 7, Goa 5, Pondicherry 5, Tamil Nadu 34, with a total number of 75,378 students at bachelor's degree level. The per student cost arrived at was Rs 4141, Calais, 1992. The comparison of annual per capita cost of the bachelor's degree program of IGNOU with the same programs offered by some select conventional colleges shows that IGNOU's annual average cost is less than 40% of the cost of the select colleges. The unit cost for the year 1989 to 90 was converted at current prices to estimate the annual costs for the year 1990 to 91 and 1991 to 92 for the purpose of comparison with the costs of IGNOU. The IGNOU average cost per student per year for 1991 to 92 was as 2214.35. By another calculation, assuming 5,000 students enroll, the expenditure per student for one 8-credit course of b.ed program worked out as 2371-. On the basis of this estimate, the unit cost per student per year works out to Rs 9481-. The difference between the estimate, the Rs 9481- and the ex-post computation of average cost per student per year for 1991 to 92 Rs 221441- is too large to accept the estimate, since about 77% of the enrollment for the year 1991 to 92 is for the b.ed program. We incline to take the average cost per student per year for 1991 to 92 as the approximate annual cost for a b.ed student. The actual cost may come down considerably if the enrollment increases. The per capita cost of the bachelor's degree students of BRA has been calculated as 777 rupees for the year 1991 to 92. The per student annual cost at the colleges and the corresponding cost at IGNOU, ITMO and BRA are tabulated in Table 1.16. Ignoring the shortcomings, the study still gives a definite picture of the economy in per capital expenditure that is made possible in distance education. Table 1.16 Comparison of annual average cost per student, degree diploma programs 1991 to 92, OU and select colleges. Annual per student cost in Rs. Look at the screen. The size of enrollment and the limited number of courses options on offer at BRA for the bachelor's degree seem to keep the per capita cost low. As for the CCIs, Raddadat, 1993, carried out an exercise to compare cost per student in the School of Correspondence Courses and Continuing Education, SEC and CE, New Delhi, with corresponding cost at 12 of the 53 colleges affiliated to Delhi University. The sample comprised colleges with different enrollment levels to make the sample representative of the wide spectrum of enrollment range. Cost per student for these colleges was computed for 3 consecutive years: 1985 to 86, 1986 to 87 and 1987 to 88. The cost was converted into cost per student. At 1987 to 88 prices, and the average annual cost per student was worked out. The average of 12 colleges reveals that cost per student in regular colleges of Delhi University was Rs. 4157-. A similar exercise was undertaken to determine the average annual cost per student at the SSC and CE for the 3-year period 1986 to 87, 1987 to 88 and 1988 to 89. The average per student cost in this case is Rs. 611-. The two studies revealed that as against the annual average cost per student of SCC and CE, R611-, the corresponding cost at the regular colleges was Rs4157-. The SCC and CE cost works out to be 14.7% of the cost of conventional education. The results of Ansari's 1992 study show that the 3 CCIs which have been represented show their per capita cost as ranging from 11% to 23% of the per capita cost of the conventional system. While studying the cost of CCIs, one needs to take into account certain cost determining factors. The CCIs function as subordinate units of the conventional universities to which they belong, and they follow mostly the very same courses by and large of arts, humanities and social sciences, barring a few exceptions offered by the parent organizations. As such, they do not generally have to incur any expenditure by way of designing courses. The preparation of courses itself does not cost much for the very same reason. Moreover, the student support services and the use of technology for course delivery are also kept at a low profile. Short intensive contact sessions are held by some CCIs once or twice a year, and some CCLs use radio broadcasts made available free of cost. Their instructional packages do not consist of audio-video cassettes. Study centers for student contact are too few in number and are run only by a few of the CCIs. Besides, the CCIs have large enrollments and less number of courses. Because of these factors, the costs of CCLs are bound to be lower than the costs of conventional universities, and even lower than the costs of open universities. In Indonesia, the Center for Research and Community Service at the UT conducted a comparative cost study in collaboration with the Institute for International Research, IIR. It compared the cost effectiveness of UT's D2 Mathematics and D2 Bahasa Indonesia programs with those provided by 4 IKIPs, campus-based post-secondary teacher training colleges, and 2 FKIPs, School of Education within the conventional university system. Both institutional and individual costs relating to the academic years 1987 to 88 and 1988 to 89 were taken up for comparison. The institutional costs, operational as well as fixed, were grouped into credit hour costs. The cycle costs were based on a 2-year program, and the credit hour costs were based on an 80 semester credit hours requirement for a 2-year program. The UT unit cost per cycle, per graduate, is only 16 to 17%. Fixed cost. The UT unit cost per credit is 32 to 33% of the cost of campus based institutions, 24 to 27% operational cost and 63 to 71% fixed cost. The comparison of individual costs, direct and foregone, is made in table 1.18. The individual foregone cost is higher at UT for the maths program. Nevertheless, the total cost works out 40 to 50% less compared to campus costs. Thus, this study shows that the distance education system is evidently less expensive than the face-to-face system. A comparison of unit costs of UT and of the campus universities of Indonesia was attempted in 1986 by a project called Improving the Efficiency of Educational System, IES. It computed the faculty-wise weighted average of operational costs per student per year. It did not take into account the number of courses offered by the faculty. The estimated cost per student at UT is lower, weight average 34.9%, compared to the cost at public as well as private campus universities, 42.8%. For all fields of study except education. The reason attributed for the higher cost of education is the low enrollment level in the courses and programs offered by the School of Education, a joint project of Harvard Graduate School of Education and the USAID on the cost effectiveness of distance education for teacher training, 1991. Undertook a comparative cost study of teacher training programs in the distance and the conventional modes offered in Sri Lanka and Indonesia. The study provides evidence that distance education was clearly more cost effective than the campus education in Sri Lanka. In Indonesia, the distance language program was found more cost effective, but the distance program in maths was found less cost effective compared to corresponding programs in the conventional face-to-face mode. The distance education programs were found more cost efficient in both the countries from the point of view of government costs. The annual cost per capita was 116 to 315 of the cost of campus-based education. Government costs ranged from 1st October to 113 of the cost of campus-based programs in Sri Lanka, and 114 of the cost of the campus-based programs in Indonesia. In Hong Kong there are 7 conventional tertiary institutions. An attempt was made to compare the unit cost per student of these institutions with the corresponding cost at OLI. Again, it goes to prove that the distance mode is significantly less expensive. The computation of the unit costs is summarized in Table 1.19. The cost details relate to the year 1991 to 92. The figures do not include capital and research grants. The FTE of OLI is calculated on the assumption of 40 OLI credits as equivalent to a full-time workload. Column 4, Average Recurrent Grant, represents the amount of money the Government of Hong Kong gives on an annual per capita basis to the institutions. Column 5, Unit Cost per FTE, is the actual cost of supporting a student in the institutions. The difference between column 4 and column 5 is made by student fees, endowments, donations, etc. In the case of IUSL, comparative cost details of similar programs are available only for the science and law programs. Ransinge, 1992. The cost advantage at IUSL, in the case of the law program, is meager 38 but in the case of science program it is about 45.5%. But it is relevant here to point out that the Bachelor in Law is the only program which fetches more money to the IOSL through student fees than what it actually spends on it. In the case of IIO, cost statistics of recent days is not available. Siddiqui 1987221 has attempted a comparison of costs for two programs based on project intakes for 1987 to 88 extrapolated from the earlier enrollments. He presents the costs for two levels of award, intermediate and b.ed, which cost 69% and 72% of the cost of the programs of the same level offered by conventional institutions. The cost for conventional institutions are based on estimated 1978 figures, corrected for inflation by a cautious 25%. Similarly, in the case of STIO, the statistical information available on cost comparison relates to the year 1980. The large number of students in the Open University helps to reduce the average cost. Chayangam 1987346. The Open Type Universities represented in the table include STIO and Ramkhamhain University. The operating cost of Open Type Universities for different disciplines varies from 2.13% to 11.35% of the operating cost of the same disciplines at the conventional type universities. STIU operating cost per head as percentage of cost per head of conventional institutions varies from 1.94% to 20.42%. The operating cost per graduate of STIU is in the range of 4.84% to 54.91% of the cost per graduate of the conventional institutions. Thus, wherever comparative studies have been made and the details of studies are made available, the figures speak positively in favor of the economic advantage of the distance education system and support the economic argument. But the question is whether the cost advantage claims can be sustained against the question of quality. 1.7 Success rates and learner benefits. What we need to consider in the light of the foregoing discussion is not a comparison of quality. Comparison is worth only where like is compared with like. As we said earlier, we should rather concern ourselves with the target set, the achievement made and the cost suffered. With this assumption, the success rate and the learner benefits are studied in the following section. The success rates as given in the papers presented at the Madras seminar are tabulated below. The success percentage represents the number graduated as against the number enrolled or appeared for exams. Strictly speaking, the percentage of pass against those who have enrolled in a course will not reflect the true success rate in a system where student-based learning is a declared policy. The comparison should, then, be with those active in a given semester or term and those turning out successful. It should be remembered that at OILA, students have to meet almost the full cost of their education, whereas at the other institutions the cost is highly subsidized by the governments concerned. Considering the average pass percentage for the conventional institutions of India, Pillai 1992-23, the pass percentage of Indian IOCCIs ranging from 22.5% to 41.2% may be taken as a positive indicator of performance, given the flexibility of OUs in terms of duration of studies. Besides, Other differences. Details of success rates concerning STIU are given by Sri Prasad et al. 1988. 160. The percentages represent average graduation rate per year of the total enrollment in the relevant programs, 2-year continuing education. Bachelor's degree programs 38%, 3-year bachelor's degree programs 20%, 4-year bachelor's degree programs 15%, 1-year certificate programs 37%. 1-year and 2-year programs show an average success rate of 37% and 38%. As programs of longer duration show lesser success rates, the program duration perhaps has something to do with the sustenance of interest and motivation. Maybe with part-time pursuers of learning, length of duration has a negative influence. As for UT, Rakhmat et al. 1988 gave some details of success rates for the initial 3 years of UT operation. During 1984 to 85 to 1986 to 87 the cumulative enrollment for degree and diploma programs was 131,743 out of which the active students were 67,446, IBID 175. UT did not graduate any students during the 3-year period, but it produced 2,607 diploma graduates, IBID 183, as details of students enrolled for the diploma programs are not available. It is not possible to work out success rates. However, the retention rates, based on 1984 to 85 cohort sample, show that only 60.5% students stayed through all the 4 semesters, 19.8% dropped out at the end of the first semester, 10.7% at the end of the second semester and further 9% at the end of the third. Challenges of a self-learning system: difficult learning materials, poor exam results, family and job-related problems were some of the factors that inhibited students from further registration, IBID 188. Individual studies about the relevance of education to employment and to job performance have been carried out in Thailand. The research titled Occupational Benefits of Open University Education by Dr. Priek Kamphir et al. Found a higher level of capability in their sample. Sri Prasad, 1988, 160. Another study by Mithai found a different sample registering a high level of job satisfaction, using what they had learned in their jobs at the OU and receiving much overall benefit, IBID 160. The statistics shows that about 30% students every year find their learning very much useful in their jobs and around 54% find it much useful. A majority of STIU students, an annual average of around 83%, are government employees who do not change their jobs following their studies. Their aim is to improve their qualification or knowledge, and they are satisfied that they can apply their knowledge so as to advance in their careers and increase their expertise. Sri Prasad, 1988, 161. Information on similar studies undertaken in other Asian countries is not available. It is said in India, Indonesia and Sri Lanka the respective governments treat OU graduates on par with CU graduates. In Sri Lanka, the OUSL degrees are of the same standard as those of the other 8 universities. The professional bodies like the Council of Legal Education have recognized the OUSL law degree, Runsing Day, 1992-21. Most of those who received the certificate in preschool education have started their own preschools and others have been recruited in existing schools. The students qualified in the diploma in technology are working as engineering assistant technicians while continuing their studies for Bachelor of Technology. Science graduates of OUSL are all either employed as teachers or holding executive posts in other organizations. Law graduates are all employed. Runsing Day, 1992, 13. 1.8 Let us sum up. The premise. A study of cost effectiveness is a study of the relationship between the resources utilized, the cost, and the objectives fulfilled, the effectiveness. Often information about the cost and the effectiveness is meaningful only in a comparative context. A cost-effectiveness study, therefore, has to follow four distinct steps. I. Defining objectives. 2. Determining the cost. 3. Comparing costs. And 4. Comparing effectiveness. Any comparison of cost, to be valid and reliable, should ensure I. Methodological similarity in costing the two units compared, i.e. applications of identical costing concepts and costing methods, and 2. Functional similarity of the two units, i.e. pursuit of similar objectives in identical operational situations. Comparison of effectiveness is possible only when the two units compared share similar ideologies and pursue similar objectives, and 2. Only in cases of such objectives which are objectively measurable and quantifiable. It is obvious that these conditions may not be met fully by any two institutions that belong to two different systems. One may only look for as much commonality as possible. Perhaps all comparisons in the real-world situation have to accept this compromise. A cost-effectiveness study begins by defining objectives, accommodating social demands for higher education is the broad objective in relation to which the cost-effectiveness of Asian OUs is studied. Social demand in this study was analyzed in terms of the broad parameters identified by GULA, namely numbers and egalitarianism, economy and quality of education, to which we added continuing education. An attempt has been made in the course of the study to determine the extent of contribution made by Asian OUs in meeting social demands in terms of the broad parameters listed above. The question of numbers and necessity has been dealt with in terms of enrollment and in terms of programs types, levels and disciplines. Each of the OUs is found to accommodate a population several times larger than a traditional institution which similar resources can normally accommodate. The figures keep increasing not only in terms of enrollment, but also in terms of number of institutions. Table 1.24 illustrates the point. Look at the screen. Table 1.24, Institutions under study. Trends in student enrollment. Notes: in the case of STOU, OUSL and UT, the figures represent enrollment in a calendar year, while in the case of the rest the figures represent enrollment in an academic year. The former of the two numbers in column 1 is to be taken to represent the calendar year in respect of STOU, OUSL and UT. In India, the OUs and the CCIs collectively cater to 11.5% of the total population enrolled for higher education. They were expected to increase their clientele to 16.5% during the 8th five-year plan. In absolute terms, this would mean a net addition of 400,000 students to the enrollment in open universities distance institutions. The annual intake at IGNOU and IGNOU show a record of consistent inverse. While IGNOU has gone through 7 cycles of enrollment, IGNOU has gone through 4. Introduction of newer programs in successive years is perhaps a factor contributing to the consistency in increase. The 9 cycles of enrollment at BRA and OUSL show a steady growth, except on 1 or 2 occasions. STU with 10 cycles of enrollment showed a declining trend for a brief period from 1985 to 1987, after which it shows a trend of ascent. UT4, which figures for 8 years are available, shows a steep declining trend up to 1989, after which it seems to have recovered comfortably, but not yet the level of its first 2 years. The decline is said to be part of a common trend in enrollment for higher education in Indonesia during the period because of economic reasons and also because of general trend among school leavers to shift from university education to short-term vocational courses. Fear of difficulties in pursuing self-learning is also said to be a reason. The enrollment at KU is also on the decline. The reason attributed, in this case, is the need on the part of authorities to man the house properly, so as to ensure maintenance of regularity in the calendar of activities. Among the CCIs of India, for which figures are available, a steady growth trend is seen in the case of 4 and mixed trend in the case of 1, if one takes the figures since 1982 to 83. Figures for the remaining CCIs are not available. On the whole, therefore, there is a rising trend in enrollment, reflecting a constantly increasing social demand for higher education. Age spectrum. The profile of all learners in terms of age indicates, in very clear terms, that OUs are catering to an age-specific population, 21 plus, who may not have access to higher education institutions of the conventional type. The 21 plus years population ranges from 1.37% OUSL to 12.65% IGNOU of the total enrollment. A large percentage of learners belong to 21 to 30 age group, ranging from 45 to 49% OUSL to 79% BRA. These are target groups outside the ambit of the conventional institutions. Gender ratio. The male-female distribution of learners corresponds more or less to the ratio in the conventional institutions. The largest female participation ratios available at STU, 47.16%. The expectation that more women students would avail themselves of the OU opportunities is yet to be realized, at least in the case of India. The reason could be traced to the nature of programs courses offered and the entry requirements stipulated. More programs that suit women's interests and aptitude may have to be designed and introduced. 4. Most of the rural women in India, the language of instruction could also be a hurdle if instruction is offered in English or in languages other than their mother tongue or the regional language. Employment status. Participation of unemployed students is more in the OUs of India, 47.33% in IGNOU and around 43% in BRA. BRA percentage is computed from 1986 to 87 figures. In the other OUs, the percentage ranges from 2.9% Hong Kong to 20% Sri Lanka. These figures again lend support to the premise that OUs cater to a population that has no access to higher education institutions of the conventional type. 80% to 97% of students enrolled at OUs are already on a job and pursue higher education for improving their qualification or skill. Entry qualification. Few of the students at the OUs have degree qualification. The percentage is 14. At STOU out of its total enrollment, 5.2 at OL1 and 34.78 at IGNOU. The percentage variation could be attributed to the levels of programs offered. IGNOU offers quite a few postgraduate diploma and degree programs in management, distance education, higher education and library science, which require a degree as entry qualification, and these courses also enjoy wide popularity among graduates employed in the fields concerned. The learner profile, thus, allows a categorical assertion of the population served by the US adult, mostly employed undergraduates, seeking to pursue higher education. Program profile. The program profile shows that all the OUs under study have been offering job-oriented programs and programs of lifelong and continuing education, besides conventional programs. Though the number and range of such programs vary from one institution to another, the profile is a pointer to the commitment of OUs to meet the dual social demands for conventional type of programs, and 2. programs of relevance to life. 4 of the OUs offer welfare-oriented programs which may be directly relevant to the promotion of social welfare programs in such areas as food and nutrition, rural development, home economics, cultivation of crops, etc. The same 4 OUs have also been offering programs that are not available elsewhere in the conventional system within the country. Such programs as on-distance education and programs of non-formal stream, leading to bachelor's degree. Thus, the learner profile and the program profile together indicate clearly the OU's orientation towards meeting social demands in terms of numbers and necessity, as also the demands of continuing education, though any objective quantification of such service is not possible at this stage. Detailed classified data from the institutions concerned, if collected by the institutions in future, may help in quantification. Equity. As far as the egalitarian dimension is concerned, though the provisions of education are thrown open to all by the OUs, irrespective of the local and social and economic stratification, we have little statistical evidence to show whether, and to what extent, disadvantaged sections of society receive benefits. The study attempted to collect data relating to rural-urban distribution of students, income-based distribution of students, and the beneficiaries across the disadvantaged social sections. We could collect data only from certain institutions with regard to the rural-urban distribution and the socially disadvantaged distribution. The data collected was found to suffer from lack of precision for want of clear understanding of the terms rural and urban among the student population. Most of the employed students of OUs are migrants to urban locales and are not sure whether they should call themselves urban on the basis of their job station or rural on the basis of their nativity. As for socially disadvantaged sections, a problem of different nature came to light in the course of the study. disadvantage was along different lines in different countries when caste and community could be a disadvantage in one country, race was in another, language or religion in yet another, and region in some other place. What makes one disadvantaged in a given country was not known definitely, and data was not available when they were identified. As for the economic criterion, neither sufficient details of what economic condition can be termed as disadvantaged in a given country, nor enough data could be collected. The open universities covered in this study, with the exception of STU, have not collected and compiled data on the income brackets to which their students or their families belong. The classification of students into high, middle and low-income groups, UNESCO and NIME, 1992, indicates clearly that at least in the four oils covered by this study, the majority of learners are from middle and low-income groups. The data collected for this study make it clear that the oils served the cause of those aspirants to higher education who, either because of their age or employment or material status, are unable to pursue higher education in conventional institutions. 87% of women enrolled at GRA according to 1986 to 87 figure were married. The other parameters of social demand, namely economy and quality of education, were taken up in the discussion of the comparison of cost and comparison of effectiveness. Cost effectiveness. With regard to costing, the study envisaged collection of information on unit costs of each of the OUs and the unit costs of a corresponding conventional institution in the country concerned. Because of the complexities and the differences in the cost concepts and cost methods applied in determining cost at different institutions, collecting identical data for comparison became difficult. This was in spite of our effort to collect comparable data through local experts of different institutions. Difficulties stemmed from a variety of cost factors as well as non-cost factors. As a result, we could collect identical pairs of unit cost only with regard to certain programs and institutional average cost per student of certain institutions. The other dimension of comparison which we could try was the government contribution as against self-generation of funds. The direct comparison of unit costs across programs could not be attempted because of inconsistencies in cost centers between the OUs and CUs. The comparable data this collected were very limited, yet they do indicate the cost trend. The program-specific cost per student proves that OUs are less expensive than CUs. The cost per student for the bachelor's, arts and commerce programs at IGNOU and IGNOU is about first March of the cost for corresponding programs in the conventional system. The cost per student for the bachelor's program in science at the OUSI is less by 45% compared to the corresponding programs at conventional institutions in Sri Lanka. The per student cost of mathematics diploma program of UT is about 50% of the corresponding program at the conventional institutions in Indonesia. Similarly, the Indonesian language diploma program costs 60% less than its counterpart in the conventional institutions. The CCIs of India make more pronounced claims for cost advantage. The cost per student of the CCIs, worked out as percentages of cost per student of the conventional system, operating within the same university and mostly within the same campus, ranges from 10% to 23%. Other studies conducted on the CCIs confirm their cost advantages in different degrees. At any rate, there are some CFCIs in India which generate considerable surplus funds through economies of scale and taking full advantage of the dual node system that helps reduce costs. There are also, on the other hand, CCIs in India which depend on government grants to meet their deficit in the operating costs. Government grants on account of the operating costs of CCIs range from 8% CCIs to 67.67% IGNOU. Government grants to CUs range from 62% to 90%. IGNOU generates its own funds to the tune of 32.3% of the total operating costs, BRA 74.41%, KOU 50%, STU 88%, OUSL 74%, OLI 85% and selected CCIs 92%. Comparison of effectiveness of programs is difficult when program objectives are not precisely defined. The problem becomes particularly acute because when we attempt to compare the effectiveness of OU programs with that of CU programs, we are attempting to compare the effectiveness of one program that has one set of intentions with another program that has a different set, goal of 1981. Under such circumstances we need to make certain assumptions and allow for certain differences. In the absence of distinctly spelled program objectives, we need to depend on pass percentage data as an indicator of effectiveness. The data on pass percentage against enrollment collected from OUs are reasonably acceptable if we give due allowance to the flexibility permitted in the system. The percentage ranges from 22.5 to 41.2. The percentage of pass against the number of students appeared presently a fairly good ratio. In either case, the failure cannot be equated with wastage. The Bridges project, which studied the teacher training programs offered through distance and conventional modes in the countries of Sri Lanka and Indonesia, have come out with statistical evidence to prove cost effectiveness of the distance mode. But as for program effectiveness, the study indicates mixed results. Very little information is available about studies on program effectiveness concerning distance education programs in Asian countries. Subjective statements made in different contexts affirm that distance education programs are equally effective, if not more, compared with conventional programs. Studies undertaken in Thailand confirm student acceptance of usefulness of the programs in jobs. The benefits of OU programs along different dimensions have been acknowledged by Sri Prasad et al. 1988, Rakhmat et al. 1988, and others. There are certain clear trends which are discernible from this study. These are: 1. Adult learners are increasingly interested in higher education and are looking for opportunities to improve their qualification and or skills to seek employment, to change jobs or for their own personal development. This is a constituency not served by the conventional university and the OUs respond to their needs without having to undergo any dislocation in their life and work. 2. The enrollment of women in OUs in Asia as a proportion to the total enrollment seems to be low. However, considering the fact that a vast majority of them are adult women, 21 plus in age, most of whom might have settled in life after marriage, their number in absolute terms is significant. The OYUs provide an institutional mechanism for the empowerment of women, raising their social and economic status and ensuring gender equality through appropriate measures to attract women to enroll in their programs and retain them till the successful completion of their studies. OYUs can become an instrument of social change as far as gender equality is concerned. 3. The employment status of OYU students in Asia is a clear indicator of the nature of emerging demands for higher education. The majority of OYU students in Asia are already employed. Apparently, they seek new qualifications and wish to acquire new skills for advancement in their career. The structures and processes of the conventional system cannot respond to this demand. The built-in flexibility of the OYUs permit them to address the needs to these new client groups and tailor programs to meet them. The modular structure of the programs adopted by the OYUs permit mobility of students across programs and also across institutions. For the conventional system of higher education does not produce a wide range of instructional materials of high quality and standard as the OYUs do, and make available to their students the participation of a wide spectrum of top-level experts both in teaching and in the professions. In the development of these materials ensures their quality, that these materials are available openly, not only to the students of OYUs but also to the students of the conventional universities and the general public is a distinct contribution that the OYUs make to the needs of a learning society. 5. The OYUs adopt communication technology to great advantage. They can reach a large number of students scattered at different places at a relatively low cost. OYUs are these instruments of mass education, while CIUs of necessity have to be selective in choosing their students in smaller numbers. 6. The OYUs have signaled an era of national and international cooperation and have widened access to good quality education to students across nations. There are several instances where materials produced by one university are utilized by another to great advantage. There are also instances of adaptation and translation of materials for local use. The OLI Hong Kong virtually buys programs off the shelf and uses them in their programs by incorporating minor changes to suit local needs. The emergence of OYUs is surely a great opportunity for the less developed countries that do not have the resources to create the infrastructure required for higher education in their own countries. It augurs well for a new era of international cooperation in higher education. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next video.